Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining the Space Syntax Lab seminar. Today, I'm really excited to welcome Fabiana Dicuonzo. She will present her ongoing research on the educational potential of liminal spaces in museum architecture. And Fabiana is an Italian architect and curator based in Porto, Portugal. She's currently a PhD student in museology at the Faculty of Arts and Humanities at the CITSEM, which is the Transdisciplinary Research Center for Culture, Space and Memory at the University of Porto. She's also the winner of the FCT studentship. Her professional practice focuses on conservation and exhibition design, working as a consultant in European cooperation projects for the Apulia region, specifically the Department of Tourism, Economy of Culture, and Valorization of the Territory. She is the co-founder of Antilla Gallery and Proferlog Architecture. She holds a master's degree in architecture from the Polytechnic University of Bari and a diploma from the Postgraduate School in Architectural and Landscape Heritage from the Sapienza University in Rome. In addition, Fabiana participated in 3 online courses at the NOD Center for Curatorial Studies in Berlin and the advanced courses on exhibition at the MAXXI in Rome. Since June 2023, Fabiana has been part of the Cost Action Toolkit of Care. And with this, I'd like to hand over to Fabiana.
Thank you, Kim. And now, first, good afternoon, everybody. I would like to thank you, the Bartlett Faculty of Architecture, the human friends, and Professor Sofia Sara, who gave me this opportunity to do this period, because this presentation is in the framework of my visiting period at Bartlett that I already completed 1 week ago. So I want to thank you, the Bartlett School of Architecture and the professors, and also the supervisor, Professors Lisa Semedo, who encouraged me to do this, to apply for this scholarship that I'm very glad to have won. And then today I'm going to present my PhD research. As previously said, is a PhD research in museology and the Faculty of Arts and Humanities in Porto. And I am at this 2nd year of my PhD. So what I'm showing to you all is a work in progress. But in this specific presentation, I want to focus on how space syntax can be applied to museum studies, explaining the methodology that I intend to pursue, since the research is still ongoing. The aim of the research, as mentioned before, it aims to investigate the liminal spaces in museums, bringing to light their social and educational potential as meeting places, by looking at the study, design, and spatial organization of school architecture. The investigation started finding some similarities in school buildings and museums. In which sense? My supervisor, we started to think about school buildings and museums as both learning environments. And since liminal spaces in school buildings have been designed in a very specific way, thanks to the work and the theories of Aldo van Eyck, firstly, for mentioning the first one, there is a very important work and research about the liminal spaces as meeting places in school buildings. So the idea is to doing this comparison between school buildings and museums as both meeting places and learning environment, studying the Turing projects by Aldo van Eyck, Herman Hertzberger, Giancarlo Carlo, and they are architects and designers who realized important buildings in schools, universities with this concept of the in-between applied to liminal spaces. And on the other side, studying museums, doing an investigation on how liminal spaces have been developed throughout the years, the centuries. And from this repertoire, I selected 2 case studies. At the moment, they are 2, in order to build a multiple case study methodology with an analysis in comparison with the design strategy of school buildings, in order to design guidelines and principles to museum experts and architects. First, in order to give a framework of what liminal spaces mean, I would like to start with this drawing representing the Stoa of Attalo. It is a long colonnade along the slope of Athens in Greece. And similar to this would have been what remains of the Stoa Poikile, always in Athens, where philosopher Zeno of Citium taught his students. This Stoic school of philosophy started under the columns of the Stoa, of the colonnade, in a space of transition between the public area of the city of Athens and the private space of the building. It is a transitional space fostering learning and conversation between students, the teacher, a meeting place for people living the city, living the public life of the ancient Greece. And nowadays we have different languages, different morphologies to explain liminal spaces. This is James Simon Gallery in Berlin, resembling the ancient Greek colonnade. I don't want to say that liminal spaces are only colonnade, but they are this intermingling area where public life takes place in the city. In this case, we are talking about the Museum's Island in Berlin, a meeting place where encounter is the key. On the other hand, last interpretation overturned the meaning. Liminal is defined as junk by notorious artist Adrian Kulas, asserting that liminal spaces are all the abandoned buildings or spaces built in the last decades, all similar to each other, without identity to tell, without an architectural language. Anonymity and ambiguity are defined by the whole of the shopping mall, the inhabited corridors, standard architecture, with no value and no potential. So in order to deeply understand the meaning of this complex word, I started to identify the meaning in humanities and social sciences. Just to mention one, the psychoanalysis, Donald Winnicott, and the concept of transitional object in the child and the relationship between the infant and the real world. Or Martin Buber with the in-between concept that was very, very fundamental, crucial to develop the concept in architecture. Aldo van Eyck was the first who introduced the concept of in-between, borrowing the term from Martin Buber, and then other architects have developed the same meaning of the liminal spaces in different words. For example, also Herman Hertzberger with the word threshold. Studying the architects, starting from Aldo van Eyck, I realized that the in-between concept is a concept that belongs to the whole building in the design of Aldo van Eyck. For instance, in the orphanage in Amsterdam that I had the opportunity to visit in a visiting period at the TU Delft in Delft, I documented the picture of the orphanage, and I realized that he designed in-between spaces and the building as an in-between space area where meeting place can occur, learning and playing and conversation can be built together through architecture. And Herman Hertzberger as well, his student, developed the concept of in-between with the term of threshold. And this is the case of the Apollo School in Amsterdam, where all the spaces are, all the architecture is built as an accommodating space where people can learn, can live together, can socialize, and have conversation in a whole in-between, in a threshold that cross all over the building. So the study of this literature review and the inspirational concept of in-between by Aldo van Eyck gave me the occasion to think about the correlation between the school and museums and how they can be compared, how museums can learn from the school. I found out that we actually can learn from school as long as museum is conceived as a social and learning environment, as it in the case of schools. And that can we learn from the masters previously mentioned, Aldo van Eyck and Herman Hertzberger. So the questions related to the research intend to identify the role of the liminal spaces in museums, identify how can liminal spaces architecture affect the visitor experience, and how can education architecture contribute to the design of a social and learning environment in the liminal spaces of the museum, and how, according to the relation of social and learning environment, museums, liminal spaces enhance inclusivity, and how does the spatial layout of the threshold support museums as meeting places. In order to going deep into the research, the definition of liminal spaces in the museum is important to have a starting point. And this image from the new topography of Rome can be very, very useful to give a definition of what I mean for liminal spaces in the museum. This topography represents in black the private area of the city of Rome in the 18th century, and in white all the public spaces of the city. We are into a very exceptional situation, exceptional representation, where also the private courtyards, colonnades, porticos, churches, or the interiors of the public interiors of private and public buildings are spaces of transition and of connection, dialogue between the private and the public. So the liminal spaces of the museum are public and free spaces that function as gradual connection from the outdoor environment to the public interiors of the institutional realms. And they are not only spaces of spatial transition, but they are spaces of dialogue and the transition of behavior change, a passage from one world to another, also an emotional passage other than a learning encounter, since in the same area can take place exhibitions, conferences, public programs, and other activities. In looking at the multiple interpretation sides of the term liminal in museums, we can say that three important issues are related to this public sphere in museums, which are the threshold fear, that is the fear of the uninitiated to experience a new building, and namely the museum, the physical accessibility, and inclusivity. I state that the most important area of the museum, namely the threshold, plays an important role in solving these issues, and that it can be expressed by a concept of Aldo van Eyck, that is the in-between as a built homecoming. That is the capacity of the liminal space to furnish a climate congenial to man in equipoise. And space is not only made of architecture. Museum is an assemblage of actants. We talk about physical factors that are people, non-human factors that is architecture, objects, technologies, as well as non-physical factors such as effectiveness, emotions, atmosphere, empathy, embodiment, and all the sensations and feelings that people can relate to the space, and not only architecture, but the environment itself that is made by these different factors. Since several factors are engaged in the investigation, a peculiar approach known in cultural geography helps to bring together all these factors, that is more than representational approach. According to this theory, human experience is a thought in action, namely that life is first performed. So in the museum experience, the human subject is not an abstract thinker, but a sensing body with that is compelled less by will and more by embodied environmental affordances. So my focus on this approach is to going into the viewer narratives, the performing perception, the relationship between the environment and the visitor. The objectives related to the above-mentioned questions are to identify the role of liminal spaces, appraise the visitor's engagement in the liminal spaces, compare liminal space design strategies in education and museum architecture, and determine the social educational potential of the liminal spaces in the museum. That brings to the core of the investigation and the application of space syntax on museology. The methodology that I would like to tackle, it's a multiple case study methodology, where I would like to tackle qualitative and quantitative analysis, starting from observation, non-participant observation, photographic and graphic documentation, sketches, drawing that I'm doing and realizing this in this month, in this year, structured interviews to tourists, inhabitants, and students, semi-structured interviews to the museum staffs in order to understand the needs and also the perspective of people working in the space, in the museum's threshold, and space syntax as a quantitative approach to support all the qualitative the data that I'm going to collect. The multiple case study involves two contemporary museums of contemporary art, which are the Serralves Museum in Porto and the MAXXI, the Museum of Arts of the 21st Century in Rome. They are two different museums in relation to the fact that we are in different location and also in different context with different surroundings. In the first case, the Serralves Museum in Porto is within the Serralves Foundation. That is a park, a private park in the city of Porto. On the other hand, the MAXXI Museum is a very vivid and living area in the center of the neighborhood of Flaminio in Rome. The idea, also talking with other scholars and professors, is to find other two case studies similar to the former and the latter. So in order to have a more solid methodology in this sense. These are some conceptual representation of the museums. And I also selected these case studies since they have a very important public program going on, a very intense public program, an education department with educational services, courses, workshop, cultural activities, active throughout the year. And they have a very important relationship with the neighborhood. In the case of MAXXI, there is also a very important feature in the Serralves Museum in an important condition, such as the festival and public programs, where social gathering is the key of the liminal spaces. The area of the investigation in both museums start from the public and free museum threshold. From the outside, when there is the entrance, the main entrance of the museum. In the case of the Serralves Museums, there is also a monitoring of the ticket in this specific point of the entrance, but then there is a very important area of park that can be experienced freely, while in the case of the MAXXI Museum, the outdoor plays the role of a square, of a public square in the city. But in both case studies, this area closed when the museum closed. And up to the interiors, where there is the main hall, the museum, the real museum threshold, when the ticketing and all the different direction and functions of the museums, like the exhibition room, the exhibition gallery and bookshop, etc. Until we arrive to the most hidden area, but still public area of the museums. In the first case, the library, and in the second case, this spot at the almost close at the entrance of the exhibition room, where there are temporary exhibitions and just to study, work, meeting, and simply stay there. In order to identify the objectives of that I previously mentioned, the tools that I can use in the framework of space syntax are different, and the methodology that I want to use intend to combine together the study on the open environment and the building. Since I am exploring the museum threshold as an open-ended area between the indoor and the outdoor environment, at the basis of the methodology, the idea is to compare and to merge these approaches to the unique approach. The references that gave me the possibility to start thinking about this approach are the very well-known Bill Hillier with the space is the machine, and especially important are the work by Khalid Zorzi and Sofia Psara, who studied the museum space with space syntax. Focusing on space syntax for museum studies, the work by architect Khalid Zorzi looked at space as the common ground between architecture and museology, investigating how architecture of museums affects our experience as visitors. And together with Bill Hillier, conducted research on the topic, investigating how spatial design influences people through the layout, and how the layout play a role in shaping the visitor experience, using tools such as the convex map, spatial configuration, traces, and visibility graph. And Sofia Psara also worked on this topic, starting from the narrative and identities of architecture. And for instance, in the chapter, the book Reshaping Museum Space, she studied the wayfinding and the educational message, and how the layout can have an impact on the spatial and social and educational experience of visitors. Using the computer modeling techniques and observation surveys, she analyzed and predicted the use patterns of existing spaces and also new development plans. The aim was to provide design solutions that can assist museum managers and designers in improving the spatial, social, and economic sustainability of museums and galleries. Visibility graph analyses are combined also with other tools, such as people traces. They serve to analyze spacing also in 3 dimensions. Since most space syntax studies on navigation focused on route choices and spatial characteristics in 2 dimensions, they bypass the effect of the third dimension on spatial exploration. The research on spatial navigation in real and virtual multi-level museums by Lazaridou and Sara consider three-dimensional analysis relevant to create user-friendly buildings. And in the case of this paper, the Ashmolean Museum was used as the main focus studies to explore the relationship of actual human movement, the visitor paths, the virtual movement with virtual reality, and spatial structure spaces, that is space syntax, in order to understand how the complex environment have an impact on users' free exploration. These virtual experiments in the study clearly showed the impact of the third dimensions on path selection and configuration. And that verticality, three-dimensional visibility, has a significant effect on how people move in a museum setting. Other studies by Psara together with Yang Shi have investigated the social impact of atrium space in multi-level buildings. Relevant for my research, this study used space syntax to conduct actual and visual graph analysis of atrium spaces in 2 university libraries. So shifting the investigation from museum studies to learning environment, I thought that also this kind of studies could be very important to build a methodology on this respect. As in museums, how atrium spaces organize the flow of people and ultimately have a social impact are topics still under investigated. And here, the multi-level analysis was useful to identify how the spatial configuration guides and influences the behavior of people, whether in a weak or strong programmatic building. The same with Sofia Psara and Marcela Araguez did the first in-depth study on SANA's Rolex Learning Center in Lausanne, looking at both spatial properties and social practices. In this case, the methodology was very similar to methodology I intend to tackle, since we are talking about a fluid and continuous undulated interior. The learning building of the SANA's Rolex Learning Center has an open form close to the in-between concept. They looked at spatial practices in the building in relationship with spatial analysis. Axial analysis, traces were combined with questionnaires to explore how the area is used by students. Furthermore, static snapshot identified the main activities occurred in the building, like studying, eating, sleeping, talking, playing, and interactions. The study revealed that the places where a disjunction between levels of visibility and permeability exists are likely to be used in a more informal way. This is an important finding that provides a new way to explore the relationship between architectural complexity and functional uncertainty in buildings where there is no definite path and circulation. Taking into account the previous studies on space syntax, how can I apply space syntax to the study of liminal spaces in museums? Firstly, it is relevant to notice that the investigation, in my case, broadened the framework from the building to the surrounding. And that for this reason, I intend to combine both the space syntax analysis. And first of all, I intend to work on the museums and schools and the whole building with convex analysis, spatial graph analysis in 2-dimension and 3-dimension, and the visibility graph analysis in order to find for the former, the visibility and accessibility relations, and in the latter, the visibility and permeability. both in museums and schools. A second stage involves museum thresholds. In order to identify the affordances of this specific area of the museums, the idea is to starting from the same tools that are used for the whole building, as with visibility, in order to find visibility, accessibility through the spatial graph analysis in 2-dimension, 3-dimension, and the visibility graph analysis, ultimately the static snapshot in order to define the affordances. The presentation, in this presentation, I want to show only the first case study, that is the Serralves Museum in Porto. And the methodology that I started to apply with the observation, and the observation in the different moments of the year, during the daily life, events, special events, public programs, festivals, in order to analyze how the same threshold, the same space can change according to the different activities that occur in the same space. And a second step was starting analyzing the spatial configuration with spatial graph analysis of the building, and focusing on the space of the building, that is the space of connection between the different parts of the museum. The area of investigation after the analysis of the building would be this yellow area that started from the entrance, that is an open area of the museum. Here we can have also the orientation to the building itself, the Museum of Contemporary Arts, and then going in the foyer of the museum before the visit, where the ticket is required. And just to present some of my first tests of the methodology that I'm still going to process and to define in a very solid way, I started to, during my observation phase, to apply static snapshot with space syntax method, defining how it was previously presented with different activities and different affordances given by the people to the space. That in my case are after a long list of activities that I recorded with pictures and graphs and drawings, are in this moment sitting, playing, standing, reading, walking, and interaction. My first task was done in the specific area that I showed you before. And he showed that there are different activities and affordances taking place in specific area of the museum. And that these affordances, these circles representing people, have also a representation in life, in the pictures of how the body performs in the space, how people feel and look at. Since during the static snapshot observation, I also worked with drawings and sketches. So my an experiment that I want to show you, from which I would like to have some feedback, is a very experimental approach, still in process, in order to add another level of investigation of data on this static snapshot, that is collecting not only the affordances, but also how the body perform in the same spaces. So I translated the affordances recorded and drawn on the plan with the real performances in the space. And so the same affordances are sitting, standing, playing, reading, and walking. In the same area, this is only a spot of the different that need to be done in all the museum threshold, but they can tell something more about how the body performs, where people look at, what they do exactly when they walk, when they sit, when they rest, and they talk to each other. The analysis, the first analysis of this static snapshot gave me the possibility to understand that the 30%, the 60% divided into 30 are people walking and standing. So there is a very controversial and different approach in the same space, apart from the other activities. That is a different also behavior in people that are working. They are also gathering, talking, or they need to be oriented in the space while working. They have to find the path, but also standing and resting, and also understanding how they can approach the museums. So this is a first overview of my methodology. There is still observation to do, since I have to also define in the 4 case studies. There is still work to do on space syntax and how space syntax can support the qualitative analysis, the qualitative research with interviews to visitors and the museum staff. The next step is to design the mixed methods approach to collecting and analyzing data, compare the liminal space strategies in education and museum architecture, also with the help of space syntax, define and foresee at the end design guidelines to enable museum experts to meet new criteria that will enrich the social role of museums. Thank you.